Hey everybody, Christopher Wing here, and I am back after a very long absence, long enough that I had time to grow a beard actually in the meantime. So it's been way too long and I apologize for that. Hopefully I will be able to get the rest of my videos out before the end of the year, fingers crossed. But in any event, this is the next part of my series covering my trip around the world to visit every Disney theme park on Earth in under 80 hours. And when we last left off, I was at Animal Kingdom in Florida, where we had ridden Expedition Everest and took a few B-roll shots around the park, and then we're waiting in a parking lot sort of behind Pizza Safari for the driver to show up. I don't know where he'd gone to, but he wasn't around. So, we're waiting there. My phone starts ringing, and I'm getting texts from United Airlines saying, your flight has been delayed 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And I'm starting to freak out because everywhere else on this entire journey, I'm able to fly direct from one location to the next. But for whatever reason, I don't know why, in Florida there is no direct flight from Orlando to Paris. You have to connect somewhere, and I was connecting through Newark, which is often, subject to delays in its own right, and I only had a 45-minute connection. So if my flight is delayed 20 or 30 or, God forbid, 40 minutes, that could spell disaster for the whole rest of the trip. So I am absolutely freaking out. Eventually, the driver comes, we get in the car, and we head off towards the Magic Kingdom. Now, the Magic Kingdom is the original park of the four in Walt Disney World in Florida, and it opened in October 1st, 1971, which means right now they're actually started having their 45th anniversary celebration, which I'm hoping to be able to see next year. But in any event, interesting to note, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stories about Walt Disney World, and one of them is that it almost didn't happen in Florida. In the early planning stages of building a second park in the United States, Walt actually was in kind of negotiations with Adolphus Busch of Anheuser-Busch to build a theme park in St. Louis, Missouri, and it got fairly far along in the planning process, but then Busch basically said, hey, we want the concession to sell the beer, obviously, and Disney said, yeah, I don't do liquor in my theme parks, and that was pretty much the end of that. So we ended up with Walt Disney World in Florida, where Disney had a lot more control. In fact, they have so much control. A lot of people think of Walt Disney World as kind of a city unto itself, but it's actually more like a county. So legally speaking, Walt Disney World is something known as the Reedy Creek Improvement District. And basically that gives them a lot of the same rights as a county. They can levy their own taxes, they have their own police and fire departments, they have just a handful of people who are technically speaking residents. Everybody else, nobody actually lives on property except for these like half a dozen people who basically are just put there by Disney to vote on things as the only permanent residents of Walt Disney World. And there's way too much to go into that I can fit in this video. So if you're interested in kind of the weird behind the scenes finagling and wrangling of Walt Disney World, which is, trust me, a really, really fabulous, fascinating subject that I'm not doing justice here. But this book, Project Future by Chad Denver Emerson, is a really great resource, and the Unofficial Disney Companion by Eve Zybert are both really great books. I'm sure you can probably find them on Amazon. There are a ton of other books as well. Those are just two that I happen to enjoy. So anyways, so we're in the car, we're driving the longest drive on property from Animal Kingdom to the Magic Kingdom, and it's going pretty well. I'm looking at my watch, the minutes are ticking down, and we get to the bus kind of drop-off area in front of the Magic Kingdom, which is right near the front gates, which would have been fine with me, but no, we of course have the camera crew with us, so we keep going past that into the backstage area, behind Space Mountain, behind Fantasyland, behind Haunted Mansion, and we just keep going and going, and I'm like, oh no, it's another one of these cases where we're driving around the entire perimeter of the park in order to get where we need to go. And so eventually we end up behind Splash Mountain, and we get out of the van and we try to get it on stage, as it were, into the actual park. And I can look at my watch and see, it is just about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you know anything about Walt Disney World, 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the Magic Kingdom, it's the afternoon parade time. So yes, we managed to get on stage inside the theme park, but we're stuck behind the 3 o'clock parade. And it is going so slowly. And I'm just like, can't we do can we cut through Adventureland, anything to get around this parade? We managed to get past it. We go past Haunted Mansion into Fantasyland, and my original plan was to ride something that was unique in every single park. So something that you could only ride in that park and nowhere else on Earth. And then part of that was just kind of to highlight the diversity of the parks and the fact that they aren't all carbon copies of one another. And I had done these like really elaborate, graphs and charts and things to kind of figure out what the most unique or least unique attractions were in all the parks. And so I really wanted to ride Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which is no longer unique because Shanghai has it now, but at the time it was. So, I wanted to do that, but I was kind of stupid about it. I didn't make an advanced FastPass reservation for it, and I thought, well, maybe the camera crew can get me on. But while I'm talking to them about that, they're like, we really want to see you on Dumbo. And I'm like, Dumbo? Why Dumbo? And they're like, well, because it's so iconic. It's it's the thing that you see in all the ads. It's what people think of when they think of Walt Disney World. And I'm like, okay, but I mean, I'm not 10. I haven't been on that ride in 20 years. I mean, Dumbo is kind of for little kids. I'm 40 something. It seems a little strange. So they're like, no, we have to get you on Dumbo. So we ride Dumbo, and it's funny too because they won't let me ride alone. I guess there's some kind of rule if you're an adult, maybe, I don't know, that you can't ride alone. So they have me ride with one of the people in the suits, which I think is hilarious. But in any event, so he's there, I'm there, we're riding the ride. I get off the ride, and they say, well, how about Mine Train? Anything there? And they're like, yeah, no, we asked, but no, it's just not possible. I'm sorry, can't do it. And I'm like, really? I mean, I've got a camera crew, I've got a sound guy, I've got 3 people in suits who look like they're pretty important people for Disney, but apparently all that is not enough to get you onto Mine Train. So if you've got that fast pass, hang on to it. In any event, I'm kind of relieved in a way because, again, the minutes are ticking by. I've got maybe 10 minutes to get out of this park, and they still want to do like an interview with me after riding the attraction. So we go up to the front of the park, in front of the castle, and they do a little interview with me, and it's the standard stuff, and it's like, so, are you excited to be going to, all the parks, and how did you get this idea, and how long have you been a Disney fan for, and what's your favorite ride, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I'm trying to be happy and answer it, and I'm doing all this horrible shtick that's like, wow, I better get going to Paris, and it's horrible, it's awful. But I'm doing this because I'm like, I need to get going to the airport. So we managed to finish up, and they drive me back to Epcot where I had parked my car. And then I realized suddenly, like, hey, when I parked my car, this was an empty parking lot. Now it's completely full. I have no idea what my car even looks like. And so I'm pressing the alarm button thing, trying desperately to make the alarm go off in the car so I can figure out where the heck it is. We managed to find it with only a few circles around. They very nicely give me a pin that they say they only give out to people who have actually filmed something inside the theme parks. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's cool. It goes along with this shirt that they gave me as well, not because they were being that magnanimous, but because I didn't realize that, I came from Disneyland, where I, of course, was wearing a Disneyland shirt, and I didn't have time to change when I landed in Orlando, so I was still wearing a Disneyland shirt when I was in Epcot and Hollywood Studios. So by the time we got to Animal Kingdom, they bought me this shirt. So at least by the time that I got around to doing that interview at the end, I was wearing a shirt that actually said Walt Disney World instead of Disneyland. But in any event, that's poor planning on my part. So I get in the car, I drive to the airport, I return the car, I don't even bother gassing up the car. I'm like, look, I only drove it, under 50 miles or whatever anyway, so they can just charge me the flat rate for that. And I get in, I get, checked in for my flight and everything. And then I'm like, okay, this is the time. I had budgeted some extra time. I'm like, this is the time. I have not taken a shower or changed clothes, aside from the shirt, at all so far on this trip. So and I've been running around in the hot Florida sun, and I'm sweaty and tired, and I need desperately to change my clothes before I get on this flight. So there is a lounge in Orlando Airport that has showers that you can use. So I went to the gate looking for the lounge, and then I realized, oh, the lounge is in the other terminal. And at Orlando, there is no connection between the terminals without going outside of security, back into security, and into the other terminal. So I had to do that, basically. I had to go out of security, back into security on the other side of the airport, go use the shower. Thank goodness there was nobody waiting to use the shower. I was first one in. Great. Got there, washed up, changed, dressed, stuffed my old clothes in my bag. Had to go back out of security, back through the other security on the other side and managed to basically just get to my plane right before it was about to leave. So from then, it was a rather quick flight up to Newark, and then I was very anxious about making this connection. I'm looking at my watch as we land into Newark, and we are about 20 minutes delayed at this point. So I'm like, okay, I have 25 minutes to run across Newark Airport. I had to figure out where my gate was. As soon as they said we could turn on our phones, I was like trying desperately to figure out, okay, what gate am I leaving in? What am I arriving in? Where do I need to go? Do I turn left? Do I turn right? Where do I go once I get in the terminal? So I'm figuring all this stuff out, and I gather up my stuff, and I make sure like I am first to the door to get off of this plane. And I am running up the jetway, and I am running out, and I run across the food court in the middle of Newark Airport, and I run to the other gate, and I get to the gate, and they are calling, "Last call for Paris!" And I am on the plane, and I set my stuff down, and I should confess at this point that I am traveling business class, and the flight attendant is like, "Hey, you look like you could use a drink before departure," and she has her little tray of champagne and whatever, and I'm like, "Oh, that sounds great." And as soon as I take it, I realize, oh my God, and the color drains from my face, because I realize that I had an iPad that I don't have anymore. This very iPad, which I left in the seat pocket of the flight coming in from Orlando to Newark. And I'm just like, that has like half of my photos and all sorts of stuff on it. I need it. And obviously the flight attendant sees the expression on my face and the color draining out of me, and she's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I just realized I left my iPad on the last plane." And like, "I don't suppose there's any way we can go get it." And she's like, "No, I don't think so, but we can just tell me where you're going, and we can have it mailed onto you." And I'm like, "Yeah, funny thing about that, I am going in a big circle. And I'm not going to be anywhere until I'm actually back home, at which point it's too late. So that's not going to work." But I'm just like, I'm like, I don't know what to do. And strangely enough, the captain of the plane happens to be walking through, and he sees me having this conversation, and he says, "Well, what seat were you in? And what flight was it?" And I tell him, and he just dashes off. And I'm like, he's not going to go and try to get my iPad for me, is he? And he's gone for a little while, and then I start worrying. I'm like, are we going to take off on time? Am I going to be late getting into Paris? Well, is he going to miss the flight? And then I thought, well, wait a minute, he can't. You're not going to leave without him because he's the pilot. So we kind of need him. But anyways, he's back in like maybe 10 minutes. I mean, he must have run, and he's got my iPad, and he was the hero of my entire day that day. His name's Captain Robert Hain. He flies for United. He's absolutely my hero. And it turns out, once we were in the middle of the flight, he came back to kind of take a rest, because they have multiple pilots on these really long haul flights. And so I got to talk to him a little bit. And it turns out that his niece, I want to say, or somebody who's related to him, is actually a star on the Disney Channel show Jessie, which I don't think is on anymore, but it was at the time. And so he has like this huge Disney fan connection as well. And when I told him what I was doing, he was super excited about it. And, we exchanged information. I wrote a very nice letter to his bosses, saying what a great thing he did, really going above and beyond to kind of save the day on my trip. And I got to tell you, from that point on, I made extra special sure to check around me anytime I got up from a seat, whether it was at a theme park or a ride or an airplane or anywhere, to make sure that I wasn't leaving anything behind, because on a trip like this, I just couldn't afford to do that. So anyways, it was a harrowing journey getting from Orlando to Paris, but luckily it all worked out in the end. We actually arrived about 30 minutes early, believe it or not, and the plane was pretty nice. And it was a 777, I believe. And, we had some pretty good food, which I took some pictures of, so you can take a look at that. I'll put those on Instagram. But overall, it was a pretty exciting journey to get to my first foreign destination in Paris. And that is where I will pick up the next chapter of the story. Be sure, by the way, to check out my website online, which is mousearoundtheworld.com, and I hope to see you all again real soon. Take care.